This is Off the Shelf. My name is David Batsoffen, and today I'm chatting with the author of this book, Hell Run Tobruk. Now, a little while ago, I interviewed Justin about his book, The Wolf Hunt, and I discovered that aside from being a former editor of Getaway magazine, the man has written 20 books. He also has a doctorate in English from Oxford University. So I think the only way I can introduce you, Justin, is to say, ladies and gentlemen, the man, the myth, the legend, Justin Fox. Welcome to Off the Shelf, Justin.
Thank you, David. Thanks a lot. Good to be with you again.
Follow that, as they say in the classics. Talk to us. This is the moment you see a Jack Pembroke novel, you know this isn't the first. So there may be more, but there were priors. So let's go back to the beginning of Jack, and then let's move forward to where we find ourselves currently. Can we?
Yeah, sure. So in book one of the series of three, it's called The Cape Raider. Jack comes out to South Africa after being traumatized at Dunkirk in 1940, and he starts serving in Simonstown on minesweepers. His father's the admiral, and he has to clash with German raiders off the Cape. These are disguised German warships, very powerful, that are attacking Allied shipping.
Right.
Then in the second book, which is called The Wolf Hunt, Jack, I've got to get my books right. Jack transfers from minesweepers to anti-submarine vessels, and he commands a little flotilla that is tasked with fighting against the U-boats that are being
Right.
sent out to attack Allied shipping around the Cape. So that's a thrilling encounter between him and U-boats, as well as an Afrikaner spy who's landed on the coast to
Right.
ready to wreak havoc. Then book three is what we're going to be talking about today, and that is Hell Run Tobruk. Jack is sent up north to Egypt with a convoy, and there his task is to escort Allied ships to and from Tobruk, which is a beleaguered and besieged town in Libya. And the South African little ships were used to escort small convoys along the coast from Alexandria to Tobruk, getting them supplies. And the story of Hell Run Tobruk is the story of those convoys.
The books have all been published by Jonathan Ball. They are all available on bookshelves. As I like to say, they used to say available at all good bookshops. Now they're available, good, bad, indifferent, online, offline. You can pick them up in a used bookstore if you're really desperate. And in
Yeah,
fact, the design of your cover, that crease there is not a crease. That's built into the design. So when you pick up a book like this, it looks like it's been read and loved and reread many, many times. And I'm sure this was a choice between the designers and the publishers. Am I correct?
absolutely, David. We've gone for a sort of 1970s style look, like the posters of the movies we saw in the 70s and the books like Alistair MacLean and Nicholas Monserrat that I read as a kid back in the 1970s. And so we're looking for that feel
Mm.
of a slightly nostalgic old world, Second World War movie kind of look and feel. And the books are written a little bit in that style, modernized, but certainly paying homage to the kind of books I read when I was a child.
Yeah. Justin, does somebody like Jack have time for relationships? Does he have time for a love life? The poor boy is running up and
Yeah,
down the coast. He's chasing U-boats. He's chasing spies. When do we get to the 50 Shades of War type of thing?
yeah, no, I do create a love interest. Certainly, at the Cape, there's a woman called Clara Marais, who's a Afrikaans UCT student that he meets at a ball, at a dance at
Mm.
Admiralty House. Not entirely unlike my mother and my aunt, who used to go to the dances with the young
Okay.
lieutenant. Yeah, so there's a lot of autobiographical stuff woven in here. Um, so there is a
With
love
that,
interest.
can I stop you there for a second? If
Yes.
you've drawn upon your mom and your aunt, how much have you utilized and did they know it was coming? So when they read your book, they went, no, 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 Justin, we told you that in confidence. We didn't mean it to go into a book.
No, most of it, fortunately, most of it is my aunt who had passed away. So I was
Okay.
getting the stories from my mom, and she was quite comfortable with coming from a family of writers. She's was quite comfortable with me twisting the facts and using bits and pieces of real stuff.
Right.
Um, so in the first two novels, it's Clara, who's this beautiful blonde Afrikaans woman that the swashbuckling British hero falls in love with. When he gets to Egypt, things get a little bit more, shall we say, exotic, and he meets a beautiful Spanish woman, a widow.
Mm.
They have a very steamy sex life in Alexandria and Cairo, and that is his anti. He needs that as an antidote for the horrors he's
I
seeing
should imagine.
and the war experience of those runs to Tobruk, which are sheer hell. It's not
Yeah.
called Hell Run Tobruk for
For
nothing.
nothing. How difficult is it for somebody like you to write, and I'm using your words now, a steamy love scene? How do you
Very hard.
structure it so that it's not pornographic, but it gives the reader the feel of how desperate Jack is to have somebody that he can go back to release all this pent-up anger and frustration and whatever it has been happening during these hell runs.
Yeah, David, I find it extremely hard to write sex scenes. And the romantic stuff is difficult because it's so easy to slip into either pornography or
Yeah.
cliche or
Yeah.
Mills and Boon. So
I
what
was
you
about
want,
to say her heaving breasts type of thing.
yeah. So you've got to tone back on the heaving breasts and try and chart a course. And some of it is trying to remember how I felt as 17, 18-year-old officer with my girlfriend miles away and seeing her once every 2 months.
Mm.
So some of it is trying to remember those feelings.
Yeah.
And then I also read a lot of these sorts of books, and because I'm paying homage to those that style and that
Mm.
genre, that does help because I can see how a stiff upper lip English gentleman in the Second World War coming off a ship and having a romantic relationship. That is described a lot in those books of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So I see how they do it, and that offers me a blueprint of sorts. But then, of course, I'm going to take some risks and play a bit. So we'll see. Each book a little bit more happens on the romantic front.
Mm. Now, The Wolf Hunt came out in 2024. Hell Run Tobruk has come out already in 2025. How how vociferous a writer are you? Are we going to get a book a year for the next, I don't know, what do you want? This is part of a trilogy. Where do you go from here? Another series, another character, or does Jack just continue until he's old and retired at a retirement home in one of those moth homes in the Cape?
David, the short answer is I don't know. The long answer is that I have already nearly finished number four, which is Jack going to Malta in
Mm.
1942, the summer of 1942, when Malta was the most bombed place on earth. I'm going to
Oh,
go and
okay.
put Jack in the cauldron there. So definitely there's a fourth, and that would probably come out about this time next year, I should think.
Okay.
Then I need to do a rethink. If it becomes a television series, then I might just keep going with Jack for many years. My agent has suggested we start a new series. I have a whole lot of Jacks in the back of my head. I can keep running him around the Second World War because there are many
I should
battles.
imagine.
The South Africans were involved all over the place,
Yeah.
Madagascar and Burma and the south of France and Greece and Croatia. So I can keep running with Jack for a long time, but I'm going to take a pause after Malta and go
Mm.
back to write a non-fiction book, which is my other hat,
Yeah.
uh, and then I'll see.
Is that going to be sort of a follow-up to Places?
Yes,
Yeah.
it'll be a follow-up to Place, and it'll be looking at African islands. So over my
Okay.
career as a journalist, I've been to most African islands, and I want to do a sort of a celebration, a travel log celebration of beautiful African islands and journeys, romantic kind of exotic journeys to these beautiful
Which
islands
will take you away from Tobruk and its ilk.
and the horror.
Now, I know when we chatted some while ago about Wolf Hunt, and I said to you, I knew nothing about U-boats coming around the Southern African coast, and you said then that you were looking for stories that weren't the done to death things. the Steven Spielberg Saving Private Ryan type stuff that has been done literally, no pun intended, to death. Um, so are you going to do the same with these stories? Yes, Tobruk is well known. Yes, Malta is well known. But are you looking for to set it where people don't know the story of that area? There is an upper story and then there is a subtext. And the subtext is
Yeah,
what you're looking for.
absolutely. And the thing that you're never going to encounter in all those famous books and movies that you mentioned is the South African dimension.
Yeah.
And South Africans were always excluded, normally deliberately. During the apartheid era, the National Party wanted to suppress anything to do with South Africans fighting and winning in the Second World War because they were very much national socialists and hugely admiring of Hitler's 1930s Germany.
Mm.
And during the war, it was all suppressed because loose lips sink ships. So
Yeah.
none of the sinkings were well publicized. So, and during the apartheid era, none of those movie makers and writers wanted to touch South Africa. So South Africa's incredible contributions, for instance, at Tobruk and in North Africa and in the Mediterranean, were never spoken about and will never crop up. You'll never see them in those movies. So
Mm.
there's a huge, rich area for me to mine that has just never been touched in the mainstream, and that is the case for Hell Run Tobruk. Lots of people know El Alamein and Tobruk, the great
Yeah.
stories, but try and find someone who could tell you about the South African Navy and their operations around Tobruk and other than naval chaps or ex-naval chaps like myself, you won't find them. So it's a territory where I can play because it's not been written about.
Are there still some people alive that you've been able to reach out to who were at Tobruk, South Africans who were there, and who've been able to share their story so that the storyline of Hell Run Tobruk is accurate from their particular perspective, paying homage to them and
Yeah.
their contributions to the war effort.
David, I haven't during my research met anybody that was alive, that is still alive, that was at Tobruk. However, my uncle Ace Kricher, the poet, he was in and around Tobruk in 1941 and 42. He was actually captured near Tobruk and spent 2 years in a prison of war camp. But he kept meticulous notes, being a writer,
Yeah.
journals, poetry. He wrote on the back of cigarette boxes, short stories, and that was a wealth of material to give me the taste, the smells, the feel of the place, and the atmosphere within the South African ranks. So that was incredibly useful for Tobruk. And then I did last year. I met the last surviving sailor, who's South African sailor who served in the Second World War. His name was Bill Small. He's now 100 years old. And I went
Wow.
and shook his hand, and he was doing patrols out of Cape Town and Durban and up to Madagascar on a small warship. But to actually shake the hand of a man who was there at this stage in 2024, 25 it was such an honor. I was kind of a bit teary, I must say.
I was going to say, what is it like? I mean, at 100 years old, you've seen, or he's seen so much change from
Yeah.
there, from when he was a youngster to now. The advancements must be scary. Nobody knew about flying or telephones or computers or any, and now he finds himself at 100 in an environment which is reliant on those things for everyday use.
Yeah, I mean, he was astonishing. He was sprightly. He was taking it all in his stride. He was absolutely on the button, articulate. Could remember incredible details of being at sea and stuff. So, those are treasure troves when you
Yeah.
find somebody like that that can give you the stories firsthand 80 years later. It's fantastic. Privilege.
In Wolf Hunt, if I remember correctly, when we spoke, you had lots of characters on various ships. 25, I think, with Jack, and even more with the U-boats. At any particular stage, in talking about Hell Run, did friends of yours say, listen, we'll donate to a charity if you use our name as one of the crew?
I think probably the opposite was the case. I could, no, no, but I do use names of people. I twist names of people I know.
Mm.
Yeah, and certainly with many of when you've got 25 sailors to remember all of them, I've got friends and family in mind who are models for each one. Otherwise, I
Right.
would just lose track. So in my notes, I have the name of the character, and then in brackets behind them, the name of a friend who I think they're a little bit alike. It helps me keep track.
I should imagine. And also, you said with the wolf hunt that you sort of lay it out like that old game of battleships, so that you know where everybody is, where all the ships
Yeah.
are. Um,
Yes.
Planes feature on the cover of this, so I'm imagining that there were dogfights going on.
Yes.
Was this one more difficult? Was Hell Run more difficult from that perspective? You know, I've always wondered about the beginning of Saving Private Ryan. How do you direct a scene where there are hundreds of people, there are boats landing, there's planes overhead, and you, as the director, have to keep control so that you don't have to shout cut and start all over again? You, as a
Yeah.
writer, Justin, do you have to do the same thing? Do you have to keep that tighter control over your writing so that it flows and it works for the reader?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Steven Spielberg would have had a whole team of continuity people keeping track of everything. I
Yeah.
only have one team and it sits in my head. And so that's why I map things out. So if I have a convoy of 24 ships and it's being attacked from different sides, I'll have it all drawn on a piece of paper next to my computer. And when a ship gets sunk, I'll cross it off so that I know that that one's gone and it mustn't pop up again. And each book gets more complicated, so and more ships and airplanes are thrown in. So this book, Hell Run Tobruk, has got a lot of convoys and a lot of airplanes flying around, and the next book is 10 times more complicated. A convoy to Malta is more than 50 ships being attacked by more than 300 airplanes with at least 100 airplanes defending. And I've got all of these little maps drawn, and I'm trying to keep track of everyone and who's dead and who's mustn't be resurrected and so on. So
Justin,
yeah, it's
do you
fun though.
then, I should imagine so. I mean, if you have nothing else to do, do you sort of wake up and go, why did I do this to myself? If I'd made it Jack on one ship, on one patrol. There's one plane that happens to fly past, but it's in the distance. He can't even tell whether it's friend or foe. There's one attacking ship, and that's only got three people left on it. Much easier to write, but no, I have to give myself this task where I've got 16 football teams and enough flotilla
Yeah.
to literally maintain the war.
David, you're absolutely right. It's almost like I've got on the back of the tiger, and the war is growing on me, and I can't get rid of it. It just grows and grows and grows.
Yeah,
I do think if I keep going, I'm going to then narrow it right down again to almost just a ship versus a ship,
yeah,
which is what Cape Raider, if it ends up being, it's Jack
yeah,
on his ship against the German on his ship, and that becomes almost a black and white good and evil battle. And I'd
yeah.
like to go back to that. But right now, I'm experimenting with just how many hundreds or thousands of people I can throw into a scene and still keep it coherent.
What are your family and friends, those people that you turn to in moments when you go, I don't know if I've got this all right. So here you are, Bob. Read this chapter and tell me if I've got it right. How do they feel about all these characters that you're throwing into the mix now?
Yeah, I will never give Bob a chapter because it would be probably just too confusing to throw Bob that little
Yeah.
chunk of meat that's so confusing. So I will wait until I've got a completely finished manuscript, and then my question is often to everybody who reads a manuscript is, does it make sense? Is it coherent? Are there too many characters? Do I need to cut? Um, because those are all the important things.
Yeah.
So that the story has to be the most important thing always, and it needs to be a rollicking read, and it must never be confusing. So even although I can get confused during the writing, the final
Yeah.
product must not be confusing, and the reader needs to be absolutely. It must be clear to the reader exactly where he or she is on what
Mm.
ship and what's happening, and all the confusion must be behind me.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's where readers are very helpful.
How do you pace your writing? Because there are certain writers that when you read the books, they're pedantic reads, and you find yourself going back to read a sentence because of the way they've structured it. And you get to a point and you go, life is too short to eat bad bagels or read boring books.
Yeah.
And it ends
Yeah.
up in a secondhand bookstore. And then you get people who write like this, which is a rollicking read, and you find that the pace picks up and almost drags you with it. Is that
Yeah.
is that a tool that you use? Because
Yes.
I know when I read a novel and I find a writer like yourself, and there are others, Dion Mayer does the same in his books. The pace picks up and you realize you're reading faster and faster and faster. It's a coherent read, it works, and then you get to the end of the book and you go, no, now I've got to wait another year for Justin to write the next. Let me go back and reread the first one.
David, yeah, I've read hundreds of these kinds of books, and so I've internalized their structures, and
Yeah,
it's quite simple with these naval novels. They often have, I mean, it's crazy. They have four climaxes that equally paced through the book, and they're almost always a battle scene.
right.
So you get 50 pages in, and there's a battle,
Mm.
and you get 120 pages in, and there's a battle, and those rhythms work quite well. And my novels often work on that sort of a rhythm, where you're going to have maybe about four climaxes, and the last one is going to be the absolute cracker where everybody could die, and so each climax is bigger,
Yeah,
and the last one is a firecracker, and that's a fairly simple formula that I try. It's not. I don't follow it. I don't follow it religiously, but
mm.
it's pretty close to that, and certainly that means that the reader, because if a reader keeps reading my books, they're going to know that it might be
Yeah.
flagging. It might be in Mombasa at a nightclub sipping G and T's, but sure as hell in within a chapter we're going to be in the thick of
In the
horror.
thick of things again.
Yeah.
Would you consider, I mean, you're talking about World War II and the various places, theaters of war. Would you consider sort of ending off this portion of your writing life with setting a battle in 3025 or something like that, where everything has it's gone through the age of the electronics, and they're going back to fighting the way that they used to back in 90 in the Second World War, but it's 2030, it's 3025 now,
Yeah.
and modern weapons, but old style fighting.
I had never, that's the very first time I've ever thought of doing something like that. I don't know if I go that far, but I do think quite a lot about prequels and sequels. So
Mm,
the Jack Pembroke series is the Second World War, but he has a father, the old admiral at Simonstown that we meet occasionally.
yeah.
He was fought in the First World War, and there are easily a few prequels with him. Then he's the great 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 grandfather that fought in the Napoleonic Wars. Those are prequels as well. And then if I wanted to give Jack a son, joining the South African Defence Force in the 70s or 80s and fighting in Angola or Mozambique, the clandestine ops,
Mm.
that would also be possible. But I haven't ever thought of taking him into the future. I'll give that some thought, David.
Give it, yeah, and please, I'd like an acknowledgement somewhere in the book.
Certainly. On the cover. Yeah.
On the, yeah, my face on the cover of your book from an idea suggested by. Um,
Yeah.
with that in mind, you tell me about you've got all these characters. Have they ever, do they cross over? And not, I'm not talking about your main of wait, before I'd gone off on a tangent in my head. If you do, if Jack does have a son, or a daughter for that matter, who could go into a theater of war,
Yeah.
who would the mother be? The lady from Cairo, perhaps?
No. No, for a whole lot of reasons, she's an inappropriate woman, and
Ah,
you will find out how inappropriate in the next novel. So
shame.
the answer with her is absolutely not,
Okay.
and but you could end up back with the beautiful Afrikaans woman in Cape Town, Clara. That would be an appropriate match.
Beauty and the Beast. Um, so where I was headed before I sidetracked myself was you've got lots of characters. Do they cross over? And as I was saying, not the main characters, not Jack or the main protagonists, but other people on the ships that maybe followed him from Cape to Cairo, literally, and pop up in the next novel and may do so in novels to come.
Yes, absolutely. I love that in other novels when I read and the characters pop up again and again in later novels, and you think, oh yeah, that guy, I remember him two novels ago. So I enjoy doing that, and I am doing it. And also, what I'm trying to do is in each of these novels, I take one of the sub characters and I give them a bit more of a story. So in
Okay.
Hell Run Tobruk, Yanni van Sale, the second in command, develops a relationship with a gay writer in Alexandria, sort of a Lawrence Durrell figure, and is very interested in poetry and art and literature. So that's a thread I will run there.
Right.
And then a very junior officer that is introduced in Hell Run Tobruk called Tom Fletcher, and he has a much bigger role in the Malta novel. He becomes almost the second protagonist. So almost like you see in TV series, sub characters suddenly become really important for an episode, and then you kill them off or whatever, and they disappear again.
Talking of that, do you have fun killing off your characters? You get to the portion of the story arc, and you go, "Is John really necessary?" No. So
Yeah,
and then how do you kill him? Because you don't necessarily want it to be violent. He could be shot by a sniper or blown up by some shrapnel, seeing it's the Second World War. That is possible. And then
yes.
do you have a moment of hesitation going, no, but maybe John's got family at home and now I'm going to kill him off and his wife and children will never see him again.
Yeah. No, I really do. I love killing off characters in the most creative ways. That gives me great joy. But I
And you say
do.
that with such a straight face, Justin.
Thank you. But I do worry about killing off fun characters that are interesting to write because
Right.
I need them. So
Mm.
I try to kill off characters I don't particularly like or I'm struggling writing with them. Then I'll just have them shot. So that then they
For treason or something like that.
yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
I'll find a reason. I'll find a
they,
reason. Yeah.
they're based on your ex-headmaster or a teacher from school that really didn't like you, and this is your way of getting back at
Yeah.
them. They may not ever read the book, they may not even know about the character,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
in your
Yeah.
head, you do.
Yeah.
Justin, the book is Hell Run Hell Run to Tobruk. It's published by Jonathan Ball. It's available all over at local bookstores, I should imagine.
Yeah.
Available online already as an
Yeah.
ebook. Okay.
And Kindle, Amazon, all take a lot, all the obvious places. Yeah.
Interesting. Your face isn't on the book. It isn't on the back cover. But do you ever, and I ask this of all the authors I chat to, do you ever go into a bookshop and your book is displayed, but it's displayed spine first? So you go, no, you must display it this way. People must see this. And then in a very loud voice go, oh, look, it's another novel by Justin Fox. I wonder if this is as good as the last one.
David, I do rearrange a little bit, particularly when they disappear, and they often disappear. But it's generally my girlfriend that will make the loud exclamation, not me. Um, about my face on the cover, when I was young and attractive, I was always a big photo of me was on the back of books, and I've noticed that publishers have removed my face from the back of books in recent publications, which
Do you
they
think
must
they're
be
trying
doing
to
something.
tell you something, Justin?
Yeah. Maybe they must use pictures of me in my 20s and yeah, the
No,
wiki.
listen, there's AI that they can
Yes,
regenerate everything from then, bring it up to date, make you look rugged like a Marlborough man that you would want to
thank
play
you.
you in the net, you would want to play Jack Pembroke in the Netflix series of Hell Run Tobruk.
Thank you, David.
My guest on Off the Shelf has been Justin Fox. The book, the third in the series, the Jack Pembroke novels, is called Hell Run Tobruk, and it's published by Jonathan Ball. Justin, it's been fabulous chatting up and chatting with you, chatting with you. Your girlfriend will shoot me, and catching up with you again after it's been a couple of decades since we last chatted. I look forward to the next one. I can't wait. I'm going to have to, obviously, but I wish you all the luck. And then your next travel novel.
Yeah, that'll be out next year. My island book. I don't know what it'll be called yet.
Great stuff. Justin Fox here on yours truly, Off the Shelf. Until the next time, thanks for joining me.